Good morning. Good morning, Tampa Bay. I'm John Dingfelder, and you're listening to Down and Dirty on WMNF. For the next hour or so, we'll be digging deep into local issues that impact you. And I hope that you'll not only listen, but join in on the conversation. Good morning, Skip.
Good morning.
Hey, Skip's on the board, and Irene's over there answering your calls. So make sure you're nice when you call in. You can join the conversation by calling in with your questions or comments at 813-239-9663, or you can email us at dj@wmnf.org, and I'll be taking your calls in about 10 or 15 minutes after we get into this morning's conversation. We are so pleased to have two fine guests here from the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council. And our guests include its Executive Director, Ren Kral. Did I pronounce it right?
You sure did.
Good morning, Ren.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you for having us.
Well, thanks for coming. I think you drove across the bay today.
I did, and I got here very quickly for a change.
Traffic wasn't too bad.
Not too bad.
And with Ren is her Director of Resiliency, Kara Woods. Good morning, Kara.
Good morning. Kara Woods Sarah. That's okay.
Kara Woods Sarah.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Was like hyphenated or?
Just three names.
Three names. My grandsons have double name like that. Mm-hmm. My son's name and my daughter-in-law's name,
yeah.
and it's a total of 20 letters in their last name.
Nice.
We'll see where that goes. Anyway, good morning, Kara Woods Sarah.
Yes.
All right. Director of Resiliency. We're going to start off the conversation by talking about what is Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council, also the TBRPC. Ren.
Yes, the TBRPC was actually formed in 1962 by then Mayor Herman Goldner of St. Petersburg. And Mayor Goldner was quite the visionary, was very forward-thinking, and he understood that we were growing at a pace in the Tampa Bay region that was quite remarkable, and that at some point we were going to need to start thinking regionally about our different issues that affect all of our quality of life in the Tampa Bay area.
He must have been quite the visionary in 1962 to realize that we need to do some regional thinking instead of the typical, town by town, city by city, county by county thinking that we usually do.
Exactly. And for those of us who have lived here for many years, you can see the difference in our region. And if you look at pictures from 1962 and look at, drone shots, as we call them now, but those overview pictures of the interstate and different areas where University of Tampa is or downtown St. Pete, it's remarkable the change in the last 62 years. We've certainly changed in our technology, our ability to do different things, but as far as our growth, those challenges, those issues are still here. And the Regional Planning Council...
Not only still here, but really...
yes, exacerbated.
Multiplied tenfold.
Yes, exactly.
What was our population in the region back in 62?
Oh, gosh, I don't know.
I'll bet definitely less than 1 million.
Probably.
Yeah, because the city of Tampa back then was probably about 200,000, 150,000. Hillsborough County was smaller than the city of Tampa. Now Hillsborough County is like twice the size of the city of Tampa in terms of unincorporated. Same thing over in Pinellas. And how many counties do you pick up TBRPC?
Our region has grown. We are actually, the Tampa Bay region is 6 counties, and that is Citrus, Hernando, Pasco, Pinellas, Manatee, Hillsborough, and Kara, who am I forgetting? Was that all 6?
Yep, that was... Yeah, you said all 6.
Okay, good. Okay, all 6. Nobody will be mad at me if I didn't leave
them out. And then how many
out.
Municipalities they included in those 6?
23.
Right.
Well, actually, we have additionally 23 municipalities that belong to the council. So we're basically covering a lot of the population in Tampa Bay. And it's really wonderful because our board members are all elected officials from those different entities, those local governments, and they work together across jurisdictional lines.
On Tampa City Council, we had 7 members. Most city governments have 7 members, some 5 members, 7 members. It's mind-boggling to think about almost 29 or 30 members show up for a meeting. And that must be like herding cats.
Well, you know what? This is the interesting thing about the Regional Planning Council. We're one of 10 in the state of Florida, but there's actually over 500 in the country.
Okay.
And they're sometimes referred to as regional planning councils or councils of government, and the short for that is COG. But when our folks walk into our room over in Pinellas Park, they work together. They've all got the same mission of crossing jurisdictional lines, working together on these issues, because we all know if we live here and we love this place, this beautiful place that we live in, if you're in the city of Largo and you're going to do something with a road in Clearwater, you all need to work together, because you can't tell when we're crossing from Pinellas to Hillsborough until you see a sign on the Gandy that says that you're moving into Hillsborough County.
Yeah.
So,
and Kara, you probably know this from your work in previously in Hillsborough County, but Mayor Iorio used to say that the city of Tampa's population would double during the day because it's a work center, an occupational center, and so that traffic that you're describing, Ren, comes pouring into Tampa and probably St. Pete as well, Clearwater, into your urban areas, and then goes flowing back out. So if you're not trying to address those transportation issues on a regional basis, you're really not going to accomplish anything.
Right. And then we also have communities like Pasco County that are commuting into those Hillsborough County and Pinellas counties. And then we're lucky to have some of our northern rural counties who are going to be subject to some of that growth in the near term.
Oh, yeah. Pasco County and Wesley Chapel and all that is going nuts. Kara, I did not do you justice. Not only are you the director of resiliency, and we're going to talk about that issue in a few minutes, but you are an AICP certified planner,
yes,
which is very impressive. I have many planner friends from from various places around here. You have your bachelor's from USF, I believe.
Yes.
I'm a Gator, but I'll forgive you. And your master's in planning from Georgia Tech, a rambling wreck from Georgia Tech. So that's cool. So did you get to study engineering classes up at Tech as well, or
no,
mostly just planning?
We obviously got to interact with a lot of engineers. It's hard not to at Georgia Tech, but and of course learn how to work with engineers. But the nice thing about being in that planning school is we were still able to talk about sociology and some of the people-focused issues that really makes planning different than engineering.
Yeah. It's funny, I didn't know anything about planning until I got to the county attorney's office back in the early 80s. Mm-hmm. And one of my first cases to litigate was a planning case. So I went down to the Planning Commission staff, Ray Shermonte, and his gang, and I said, we've got to litigate this. You're going to be my witnesses. But first, you got to teach me about planning. and I loved it. And I kind of regretted that I had never gone to school to study planning, because I think it's a wonderful, important, and fascinating area.
Yeah, I think so, too.
Yeah. So, Ren, let's jump back to TBRPC for a minute. You guys also give out annual awards. What's that about?
Oh, we do. It's our annual Future of the Region Awards. We just celebrated 30 years, and we had it last Friday at the Regional Resiliency Summit. And we honor, it's a great program in that we honor from different categories. So you may enter in community service, environmental, natural resources in the environment, economy and energy, and of course, resiliency. And the beauty of the program is that the little cities of Temple Terrace or Gulfport don't have to compete with the city of Tampa. We actually acknowledge small local governments for the different projects that they're tackling and the things that they're doing, because they're just as impressive to be such a small government that's trying to make differences.
Well, and when I read about the 30th awards, you gave some to Manny.
Yes, Manny Pumariega, who is our former executive director. He was acknowledged with the Herman Goldner Award for Regional Leadership.
Want to give Manny a shout out, and then Janet Long. For her many years of public service, she really cared about these issues. No matter what seat she was serving in Tallahassee or locally, you could always count on her to care about these regional issues.
Commissioner Janet Long is a remarkable person. She actually spearheaded a lot of our work in resiliency by seeing the need to form our Tampa Bay Regional Resiliency Coalition, which was the second formed in the state of Florida, and I think 16th in the country, maybe.
Sounds right.
So
another visionary,
another visionary, and I tell you what, Commissioner Long is like a dog with a bone. When she sees something that needs to be done, it gets done.
I don't think she's going anywhere.
And
I
it's
think,
done well.
I think she'll still be around working hard, and no matter what capacity it is.
She will be. I think she's stepping down this November, but you can bet that she'll be on our radar to keep busy.
You also honored the Sunrunner BRT system, Tampa International Airport, Indian Shores, like you say, a little small town over at the beach, Tampa Heights, which is close to my neighborhood over here, Tampa Bay Estuary Program, which we had on last week.
Yes.
And Holmes Beach, City of Tampa, Haya Park, which City of Tampa did a beautiful job. I don't know if you guys had a chance to go to Haya Park. My wife and I walk over there right there on the river. They did a great job of making a park you can walk in, but also keeping it very environmentally sound. Did you have a chance to review that, Kara?
I think we actually had an event near that park, but I could be wrong.
We did.
Yeah,
we did. We did our
Resilient Ready
program we had there at the civic. It's like a little center, community center in that park. It was great.
And this year, I think you've got a mix of this year and last year's projects, but I did want to point out that this year we also honored the Dunedin City Hall, which is a really cool project because it has a mix of sustainability, and they have like solar panels that are helping with the electric capacity in that building. And then we also honored Coachman Park this year, and we gave our big award to a greenhouse gas emissions tracking tool that actually came out of the Hillsborough County staff. So
wow,
that was really cool.
Very cool. Well, I'm glad we picked up on some more of those. So let's talk about resiliency for those of our listeners. And by the way, for those of you tuning in right now, this is WMNF 88.5. You're listening to Down and Dirty. And our guests today are from the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council. And we have Ren and Kara here to give us their knowledge and brilliance on resiliency. And so if you want to participate in the conversation about resiliency or anything related, 813-239-9663, or you can send us an email at dj@wmnf.org. Kara, what is resiliency? You know, I think resiliency is one of these words that I don't remember using or hearing about maybe up until about 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Right, and it has other meanings outside of the planning context. But for us, resiliency is the ability to prepare for some of the natural hazards and some of the man-made hazards as well, and being able to bounce back from those quickly. So it's being able to bounce back from the hurricanes that we know are going to happen, but it's also being prepared for like sea level rise and rising temperatures that we're starting to see and we know are going to get worse.
Yeah, so I looked it up somewhere on my phone, and it said resiliency is defined as an ecosystem. And I'd say we're sort of an ecosystem. Mm-hmm. We're like 5 million little microorganisms stuffed into 6 counties as an ecosystem. But an ecosystem's stability and capability of tolerating disturbance and restoring itself. That kind of works,
right?
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
So, so go a little bit further than in terms of preparedness. I know one of your tasks. You have many hats that you wear daily, but one of them, Kara, is emergency preparedness.
Yeah, so for emergency preparedness, that's kind of a shorter term concept where we're looking at making sure our residents know about evacuation, making sure that they know where their evacuation zones are, how they can prepare for their home, maybe putting up windows, knowing about the evacuation shelters and those types of things. And then when you think about things like the concept of what we call hazard mitigation, that's more of a long-term thing. So it's kind of keeping people out of that danger zone in the first place. Right.
Ren, I was thinking about this yesterday in anticipation of this show. TBRPC, Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council, is a resilient organization. And the reason I say that is, well, you started in 62. You probably had who knows what the mission was in 62 and where the funding came from and that sort of thing. When I first became aware of TVRPC was in the 80s, and you guys had a lot of control and authority about large-scale rezonings and comp plan amendments. I think it was comp plan amendments. So if a developer wanted to build a new mall or whatever, and it fell over into those large-scale comp plan amendments, I remember very well those went over to you guys for some serious review. And then, you can correct me if I'm wrong, as I recall, Tallahassee got pushed probably by the development community and said, we don't like that additional review from the regional council, and they chopped you guys out of that process. But you guys, a resilient agency, you bounced back from those sort of setbacks into where you are today.
It's interesting, John, because those were actually called developments of regional impact.
Yes.
And they had thresholds of developments that were huge. It was like the Saddlebrooks of the world, or West Chase, or some of these different things. The interesting part of that is that we still have developers who contact us occasionally to have us review their work.
Just on a voluntary basis?
Yes, just to see, it's because some of them, it's very important to them.
And do you do it?
We do it.
Yeah.
We do it. So, but yes, you're right. Growth management laws changed, and that's when the DRI went away.
And hand in hand with that, and segueing to that, another task that I think both of you guys probably work on is economic development. That sort of surprised me, because there's all these other regional economic development agencies. But what do you guys do in terms of economic development?
Well, there's something that's really critical that we do, and one of those is that we serve as the economic development district for our region, for the Tampa Bay region. And why?
Another acronym, EDD.
Yes, EDA, Economic Development Administration.
Oh, I messed that up.
But then, no, you're right. Economic Development District is from the designation from the EDA.
Okay.
Planners use, jargon and acronyms. I tell them, you got to talk to me. I'm not a planner, so I'm doing the same thing.
Our book of acronyms. Right?
Exactly. We call it alphabet soup, and we do have a list. But anyway, it's important because we serve as the Economic Development District, so all of our member governments are then entitled to federal funding from the EDA.
Oh, wow.
If we did not host that as a district, then those fundings would not be available to our member governments. So it's very important.
Participate in any grant writing or whatever that a local government might be doing. We do, and then we also do a lot of resiliency work through the EDA when the storms come through. Dahlia, Irma, you name it. We've gotten projects from the federal government through the EDD. To help local governments recover from these events. I knew a lot about stuff like this, but I had no idea. All right, we've got to call Mike in Sarasota. Let's see if we can pick him up. Mike, thanks for your patience. You're on the air.
Thank you for taking my call.
How you doing today, Mike?
I'm doing all right. Let me take you off speakerphone. Okay, I first like to introduce myself. I'm Mike Lachey, and I'm the Executive Director of Florida Walks and Bikes, and we lobby for bicycle transportation and pedestrian transportation in the state of Florida.
Great. And
as I heard your guest introduce himself, I had to smile because it's tremendously ironic that these planners, they speak of resilience and emergency preparedness, because planners have been a disaster regarding disasters. And this is due to the hidden agendas of the planning profession, and one of which is that they are essentially anti-automobile, anti-car. And I could cite examples of that, but just read anything by Jeff Speck or Andre Dewani, and you can get. I think they might not say they're anti-car, but I think generally they try and discourage vehicles and encourage pedestrian and bicycling and that sort of thing. Well, read Jeff Speck and Andre Dewani. They're quite clear about it.
Sure.
But now the prominent example I want to speak about, and just give you one great example of how planners have been a disaster for resilience, is Paradise, California, where planners went to that town and they reduced car lanes. They cut down car lanes as part of a road diet. So what happened in Paradise? They had wildfires came up, and 85 people died. They were burned alive in their cars because there weren't enough lanes for them to get out of town. And this is all part of the anti-car agenda, and planners, not thinking ahead and actually doing things which led to lack of resilience and lack of emergency
So,
preparedness.
Mike, what was the name of what was the name of your organization again?
Florida Walks and Bikes. Now I want
Florida
to point out
Walks
how
and
this
Bikes.
is relevant to us here today, because
Yeah, where do you fit into this? This is interesting.
planners are doing the same thing in Florida.
Okay.
They're trying to reduce road widths in Florida. They're trying to reduce shoulders in Florida. They're
Right.
trying
What do they call it? Diets? Road diets? Or something?
Well,
Lane
what-
diets.
A road diet, yeah.
It's called a road diet when you reduce car laneage. And what they're also trying to do is they're trying to reduce shoulders, which bicyclists use. They're trying to reduce painted bike lanes, which bicyclists use. And
All right. Well,
it's all part of
tell
this
us what you think is better, and then we got to move on.
Okay. Well, what I think is better is to go back to the standards which engineers put in place for bicycling and for motorists, which is have shoulders on roads and painted bike lanes on roads. But planners don't want this. They want roads to be as narrow as possible, and be as part of this misbegotten agenda of making it hard for motorists.
Well, I think it does slow down traffic if you have narrow roads. But listen, Mike, hey, I really appreciate your call and appreciate you listening. We're going to throw your questions and comments over to these ladies, and you have a great day.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Well, he raised some interesting points. Are you working on any of these issues, Kara?
We don't work on as many transportation issues. You are probably familiar with the Regional Transportation Organization that was recently dissolved, the TBARDA, or the Tampa Bay area.
I served on it.
Yeah.
Not when it was dissolved, but right before it was dissolved.
So,
I guess I did such a lousy job they dissolved it. I don't know.
So traditionally, that organization would have done the transportation portion, and we would have done kind of everything else, the environmental issues, the growth management, and the resiliency and disaster preparedness.
I think when it comes to one of the things he said was, let's say in the city of Tampa, because that's my frame of reference. The city of Tampa, you've got roads that you really, most cases, you can't widen. So if you're going to add bike lanes or bike stripes or whatever, inevitably some of that's going to come from the lane, from the driver's lanes, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is a mix. Also, he kind of said that it was an engineering standard versus a planning standard, but planners aren't doing this in a silo. We're always going to be working with engineers. So if we're narrowing those lanes for, whatever reason, there's an engineer who's working with us who's saying, yes, this is still within the, appropriate standards for a lane width or a turn radius, or the site triangle is still being met here. So we're not really working in a silo. We obviously do value and try to think more about how people use those roads, or how those roads could potentially cause additional pedestrian deaths or bike accidents. So that's kind of one of the things that planners are thinking about. But
that's pretty much on the micro level. Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council, you guys, I think, are more macro, right?
Right.
You're trying to give guidance to your 30-member governments in terms of the bigger picture of all these things, right?
Right. So for us, we're looking at, again, like you said, the regional level, and we have our Regional Resiliency Action Plan, which does encourage our member governments to consider transit-oriented development. So, making sure that you have the density to support mass transit, making sure that you have the bike lanes needed to allow people to choose between a car or a bike. And those are things that we know will reduce greenhouse gas emissions. But yeah, we're at a more regional scale.
Yeah. One of the things I read about on your website had to do with, this kind of struck me as an interesting, you said the intersection of affordable housing and resiliency?
I think you're looking at our REACH report, which is an acronym, and I apologize because I don't remember that acronym. But the REACH report, we actually looked at where our affordable housing currently exists, and it's our multifamily affordable housing, subsidized affordable housing, and also what we call NOAA, naturally occurring affordable housing, and how those are potentially going to be impacted by our current flood hazards and future flood hazards. And with that data, we hope that our member governments are going to look at those areas and say, we already have an affordable housing crisis, but now we're going to lose this many units because of those additional flood hazards.
Ren, it makes me think of the, what was the giant New Orleans hurricane?
Katrina.
Katrina, when it became very obvious that the lower income folks and their housing was in the worst floodplain over there in New Orleans, right?
Right.
And it just, I can't remember the names of it. I remember the sort of Treme because I watched that TV program. But anyway, on a serious note, they got wiped out. That's where most of the people I think died or were up on their roofs getting rescued.
Right.
So we have to make sure that when we're building affordable housing, that we're not putting it down in the lowest parts of our cities and counties here, right?
Right. You want to make sure that you're building it in resilient locations. You also want to think about the fact that we're already seeing in Miami is there are higher areas that are being, gentrified. Those neighborhoods are being dislocated because Miami is starting to flood in the more affluent lower lying areas. And so
are there higher areas in South Florida? I didn't even know
slightly
that.
higher, I think.
10 feet instead
yeah,
of...
I think like Little Haiti is like slightly higher. So they're seeing some gentrification issues there.
Well, and I'm guilty of that because we moved from South Tampa at 8 feet up to Seminole Heights at 40 something feet. And part of that was just for that reason.
Right. And it's a trend that makes sense for homeowners, but our elected officials and our governments have to think about, well, where does that growth go now if we can't put it on that?
And where are the people getting displaced to?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And John, I do have the acronym. It's Resilience and Energy Assessment of Communities and Housing.
Cool.
And I would like to just invite any of the listeners to, if you want to learn really more about what the TBRPC does, feel free to contact us as well as visit our website.
All right, we've got another call. And what is the website? It's just TBRPC Tampa or something
TBRPC.org.
Oh, that's pretty easy.
Easy. It's
All
our
right,
acronym.
We have, I'll mispronounce it, Dondre, or I guess, in Brandon. Are you there, sir?
Hey, yes, it's DeAndre.
DeAndre, I apologize. How you doing?
I'm hanging in there. I appreciate this forum, really. I'm from East Tampa. My family's been there for a good few generations, actually.
Yes, sir.
And I have a lot of curiosity about what locals maybe have suggested as far as for the area. I've had a lot of thoughts on it. But I don't necessarily want to ask that question. It has to do more with the environment. I'm really curious. Do you guys, by chance, track the wet space, like wet spaces, and where they were and their decline over the past, I guess, 30, 40 years? Because I feel like there's a relationship between having those retention ponds, in so many spots. I don't know what they were maybe prior. Maybe they were more agriculturally related for a time, but the area has become more urban, suburban, et cetera. Maybe they've just kind of been built over for the sake of real estate. But I feel like that is a very important factor, to a matter of a healthy environment.
So DeAndre, your point is, I guess in East Tampa, you've noticed that some of the drainage ponds that you grew up looking at are no longer there. Is that your point?
Yes. Essentially, I'm so curious about so much. I'm glad that they left the contact information and all of that, because I hope to visit that a bit.
Yeah, and try and attend their resiliency conference. They just had it, and they'll have another one, I guess, next year in early May or late April, something like that. But
so the retention ponds, I feel like that was an important feature, and then as far as for the ecosystem here. But now that they're gone, that with urbanization, maybe what we're missing more now, along with some forestation and et cetera. I was wondering, are they tracking any of that?
Okay. All right. We'll check with these ladies, and thanks for the call. Thanks for listening.
John, I'll turn it over to Karen in a second. But this gentleman, sir, I just want you to know that there's a great resource out there, the Tampa Bay Estuary Program. Its acronym is TBEP, and that would be a great resource for you to look at wetlands in the Tampa Bay region. So I advise that you can also go there for help, and please feel free to contact us at the council as well, and I'll turn it over to Karen.
And Ren, you said that told me earlier that, and I didn't know this, the Tampa Bay Estuary Program, TBEP, which I sat on that board, started as part of TBRPC.
It did.
And then it spawned out. Hey, that's a good pun. It spawned out of your agency, and now is an independent agency.
Correct.
We had them on last week.
Correct.
Yeah. So that you can find TBEP, probably they have their own website, Tampa Bay Estuary
Yes.
Program. Kara, how about the floodplain issue, and specifically any ponds? I don't know if you guys would be, maybe through your GIS system, maybe you're tracking ponds.
I think it's a statewide database that we look at when we have another acronym for it called the LULC, and I apologize, but it's the land use land cover, and it, like you said, it's a mapping product. So it's tracking where we have, developed land, wetlands, lakes, ponds. It has all of the different types of land uses you could really think of, and more
to
than
look at that over, let's say, 20 years ago, or maybe 30 years ago when I first started getting involved in this stuff, to look at it now, especially on a region-wide basis, that must be pretty crazy, because all of a sudden, I mean, who would have thought that the urbanization would have spread out into these rural counties? Polk County, Pasco County are becoming bedroom communities of
yes.
Tampa, and et cetera.
Right, and it's important as we're looking at the new development that we think about the impervious surface issues, which I think DeAndre's kind of referring to as well. Like, where is the water going if we keep paving over stuff, if we keep developing everything? And so we need to think about how we set standards for how much impervious surface we're allowing as the development continues to go out. How are we, and DeAndre's talking about the retention ponds.
One of the things that bothered me when I was on council was, a big part of our job was rezoning. And we were always told by our legal staff, when the neighbors would say, well, wait a second, you're paving over that 5-acre tract next to my house, you're paving it over with an apartment complex, but those issues, and I want to raise flooding issues at the rezoning stage. And our legal staff would come trotting in real fast and say, oh, no, you can't address that at this stage. That is addressed through SwiftMud, and that's addressed at the building permit stage, and it's not a rezoning issue. And that always irked me a little bit. It definitely irked the objecting neighbors who were very concerned about, their, lower homes next door getting flooded. And often it happened, 5 years later, sure enough, it happened. And then they said, all they could say is, I told you so. But it bothered me that we were told that. Have you heard that comment before?
Right. Yeah, I was actually in zoning with Hillsborough County when I was there, so I apologize for that. But
do they have the same response at the county?
It says there's a standard in the code that says that any new development will have to retain all water on site or mitigate water to the extent that it causes no adverse effect on neighboring properties or something along those lines.
And if this was television, you would see me rolling my eyes right now because it I don't know. From an engineering perspective, I know that theoretically they could do that.
Yes.
And I'm sure some of them do that with vaults or, other or stormwater ponds or vaults or what have you. But I don't know. I cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Because it's also a factor of, those are the standards for today, but we have projected increased precipitation. We have projections for sea level rise and continued high tide flooding. So I don't know if it factors those additional water in and flooding issues into those. And I think that's kind of the next step is we need to factor in those new conditions.
So the 100-year storm is now coming every 10 years, perhaps.
Well, yeah, it's not that we're seeing storms more frequently, but they're more intense when we do see them.
Yeah.
And I've heard from some of our public works directors in our region that we are getting the same amount of rain per year, but it's happening in a 3-month window instead of a 12-month window.
Which, from an engineering perspective, is a big deal.
Yes.
Because if your engineering structures are only built for X and you get 2X on that
Exactly.
24-hour period, it's not working.
Right.
It has the potential not to work.
It's time to start thinking about how we design our stormwater systems differently.
All right, we've got a lot of calls today. Mary in Dunedin, sorry for the wait. You're on the air. How are you this morning, Mary?
I'm fabulous. How you doing?
We're doing good. Thanks for listening. What's your question or comment?
Well, what's this about Ron DeSantis saying no mention of climate change?
All right. I don't know that these ladies want to touch that hot potato, but I'll definitely.
I just wondered what everybody thought about it.
What do you think about it?
I think it sucks.
Yeah.
It's stupid. Anyway.
Well, I guess when you're running for Republican president, you're not allowed to acknowledge that climate change has any human origin, and you would think
he ain't running anymore.
Right. Well, not till 4 years from now.
Well, yeah. Good luck on that, buddy.
Mary, how are things in Dunedin? These ladies say that that your city hall just got an award for being resilient, and that's pretty cool.
I didn't hear about that, but Dunedin's fabulous. I love it here.
Yeah.
It's like where old hippies go to semi-retire.
That's a great little town. Thanks for calling. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for answering.
Take
Thanks
care.
for being there.
Yep.
Bye.
All right. Yeah. Every time I get over Dunedin, I say that's a neat little town to live in. Mm-hmm. Art community, and now progressive with a resilient building. Speaking of which, when the city of Tampa built this big structure over here on Hannah recently, it's a $100 million controversial city hall or city building. They had these rooftops on top of the garages, and I couldn't help but ask the question. I said, "Where's the solar panels?" And anyway, I said, you might get my vote if you put solar panels all across all these buildings. And I haven't been up there to look yet, but I hope they did what they said they were going to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk more about resiliency. There's so much to talk about. How did the conference go? It was, I think, just last week. You guys were very, very busy. How many people attended? What was the discussion? What kind of energy was it? And
it went great. I think this is our first conference, and I've heard from some of our attendees that it was the best one yet. We were on Clearwater Beach, which is always a beautiful venue, of course. I know we had over 300 people attend.
Wow.
I think we had even more actually registered, like 350. So I feel like it, grows every year. It improves every year.
Do you guys offer scholarships for that? Because I know it does cost a couple of $100.
We allow a couple of students to volunteer, but we don't have a scholarship yet.
Maybe you could have like a community scholarship where people like Dondre, who just called in, and it sounds like he might be interested in learning about some of these things. Maybe each one of your member governments could offer 1 or 2 scholarships or something like that.
That would be great. I'd love to see that.
Yeah.
And some of the topics that we covered, a lot of it was the focus was that it's been 5 years since we formed. So what have we achieved in the past 5 years? We've got our first greenhouse gas emission study showing where our major emitters are in our region.
Now, is that on your website?
It is. It's
How do you
actually.
get there? How do you get there? Because I was looking for it yesterday.
I thought it would be easier to find, but we actually have an additional website for it called cleanairtb.org, I believe.
Okay.
And that's our clean air program. It includes the greenhouse gas emission study, and we're also hoping that it'll include some funding in the future. We've applied for a big grant from EPA, so we're crossing our fingers on that. We also
is that the $1 million?
Oh no, it's we're asking for almost $200 million.
Whoa!
Yes,
Okay.
we
Well, the
are.
$1 million grant I saw you already got.
Yeah,
Was
we got that.
We got that for the phase 1.
Okay.
And that was to do the study.
And Congresswoman Castor, I think, was helpful with that.
Yes, she was very helpful with that. And then we formed a partnership with our MSAs, Metropolitan Statistical Areas, which is covered by the Census Bureau. And we also have included, because this is very competitive funding, we included Orlando and Jacksonville in our application. Mm-hmm. And we're hopeful, John, you mentioned about no solar on the public buildings. Well, one of the components of this grant is letting local governments in those MSAs potentially put solar on their public buildings, as well as in disadvantaged neighborhoods. So we're really hoping to have that opportunity to actually implement the strategies that we identified in the first phase.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important, and I know you guys do the best you can, not just to respond to climate change, but at least locally to try and reduce climate change, right?
Right. So we call that climate mitigation, which I know is confusing because there's also hazard mitigation. But climate mitigation is, I don't know if you've ever talked with Susan Glickman, but she says it's basically hazard mitigation is we're flooding our bathroom and we're trying to dump the water out in a bucket. And climate mitigation is actually turning off the faucet instead of just trying to dump the water out.
Yeah, known Susan for forever. So let's talk about the greenhouse gas study. How is it done? You got a meter you put on your back and you walk around neighborhoods, or how's that work?
It's all the first one is all from existing publicly available data. So data from like the the Federal Highway Administration, and so that data already existed. We just pulled it together at the county level, and we used this software.
Well, give me some examples of where's greenhouse gases coming from in the Bay Area, starting at the top.
Transportation.
Cars, buses, trucks.
On-road vehicle emissions, that's like the top emitter, and then followed by what we call the energy sector, so the production of energy for commercial, residential, and industrial uses.
TECO and Duke Energy and whatever the other little ones might be.
Yes. So those are like not surprises, really. Obviously, we're kind of in our single vehicles driving across the highway, so it makes sense that we're high in our vehicle emissions. And I think even a lot of regions that are, Atlanta probably is also high in emissions for that reason. So.
Well, listen, if you're tuning in, we're having a great conversation here with Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council. We've got Ren Krall and Kara Woods Sarah.
Thank you.
Or Sarah?
No, you got it right
Sarah.
the first time.
And they're from the Regional Planning Council. It's tbrpc.org to go online and find out more. You're listening to WMNF in Tampa. You can write us at dj@wmnf.org or give us a call. Join the conversation. We've got a couple minutes left. 813-239-9663. One of the things, Kara, that I found interesting about the city of Tampa, and it probably would be true for any local governments that are burning their trash, is that that's one of the largest greenhouse generators in the city. And it's an interesting conundrum because people are going to generate trash. We can encourage them to generate less trash, but at the end of the day, they're going to generate trash. Then it goes to the city. What's the city going to do with it? Long time ago, 30-something years ago, the city said, we'll burn it and then produce energy from burning it, and which the city does. I'm sure you know that. And, so that's a good thing. They make energy from the trash, and they don't go to landfills, which is, also generally a good thing. However, when the incinerator is not necessarily working, we send a lot of our trash to Hillsborough County, who does use the landfills to bury it, and then it issues methane gas from the landfills, right?
And unfortunately, we did invite Whit Reamer. He couldn't be here today from the city of Tampa, but he's obviously aware of those issues. He's trying to get funding to study how they can do like a carbon capture for the waste-to-energy facility so that they can reduce that emissions.
So they're doing a massive rebuild of that energy facility right now to the tune of something like $80 million. It doesn't include that capture system?
I think he's looking for a study to figure out how they can do a better job of that carbon capture.
Okay. Well, I hope my former brethren over there in Sistren, is that the word? Brethren in Sistren? Brothers and sisters on city council and the mayor's office will look into that deeper. I think it's really, really important.
Yeah.
So tell me more about the, we said cars, buses, trucks, et cetera, on the road. Then the generators, TECO, Duke Energy. What's the next one down?
I can't remember off the top of my head some of the other...
Cattle?
Agriculture and other land uses is one of the emitters. I'm trying to think of...
But the cattle is true. I mean, not necessarily in these counties, because we don't have any cattle anymore in these counties, but cattle generate methane gases through their natural body fluids.
Yeah, not as big of an emitter as the top two emitters, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what to do about that.
Yeah, I think probably focusing on the higher emitters. The transportation is several factors higher than any of the other emitters, and the energy sector is technically broken out into those three sectors of commercial, residential, and industrial, and then we combine those to be one sector. But those are, magnitudes higher than any of the other emission sectors. So, all
right. So the show's called Down and Dirty, and I'm going to ask you guys a down and dirty tough question, and if you can answer it, that's great. Are federal government, state government, and local governments doing enough to get people out of their cars and into other alternative forms of transportation that is less greenhouse gas generating? That's a long question.
Our local governments, I feel like, are doing everything that they can. And obviously, we're big advocates of local government, and that's our job, is to organize the local governments. Our local governments are definitely switching over their company or, public vehicles to electric vehicles as often as they can. They're encountering issues with I'm forgetting what it's called, but there's not enough electric vehicles to buy at this point for them to be able to do that switch over. So they're encountering problems there. I know that all of our member governments that I'm aware of are encouraging their residents to get on the buses. They're trying to make sure that development is happening near buses. So I think the local governments are doing all that they can with the funding that they have available to them.
So I know my arm is sore from patting myself on the back here, but I will say in 2019, well, actually going all the way back to 2010, but in 2019, when I came back to council, I came back with a vengeance, and I called John Bennett, who's the chief of staff, and I said, look, we're buying 30 cars on this agenda item. We're buying 50 cars on this agenda item, for different code enforcement, just not police cars, just code enforcement, people that just drive around all day long. I said, why not electric vehicles? I said, what's up with that? At least hybrid, if not electric. And sure enough, they kind of scratched their head, and this was before WIT was even on board. They scratched their head and they said, yeah, you're right. And so the city of Tampa started switching over to, I think Leaf, is that a car? Leaf?
Nissan Leaf.
Yeah. So they started buying those. So like I say, I'll pat myself on the back a little bit. Another impact and we talked about, we alluded to this, is sea level rising. I know your beach communities are starting to feel it over there. Anybody who's that close to the bay and we had over in Madeira Beach, we had 2 flood events just last fall. Ren?
Yes, and I wanted to bring up that one of the subject matters that the council has always been in the forefront in is evacuation planning and emergency management for storms, for those large catastrophic events. And Karen, I noticed that WMNF in the lobby has our evacuation map hanging up. So
Cool.
That's excellent. We were the first in the country to ever do a hurricane evacuation study, which has been modeled after many folks in the nation. But
And now they say a lot of it is to say stay in place.
okay, so that's what I wanted to bring up because
Yeah.
your listeners, if we leave them with anything, because tis the season, but as Floridians, we need to always think about this. We had Jeff Bardelli from Channel 8. Who spoke at our summit, and he told us that we were going to have a very active season this year for hurricanes. So I can't encourage folks enough to really listen to your emergency management professionals when your county officials and your city officials come on and they ask you to evacuate. Trust me, that there's so much thought that goes into this, and it's really for your safety. And as you mentioned, John, there's also a component. For example, I do not live in an evacuation area, and therefore I'm told to shelter in place. So it's important that I don't get out on the highway because they wouldn't tell me I can shelter in place unless I could do that. And so you really need to listen and also open your homes up to your neighbors who might be evacuating from other areas. Use your faith groups to set up systems where people have somewhere to go so that they're not on the road and crowding up roads and hotels along to Orlando. And then the storm turns and it goes into Orlando. So
Yeah.
we really need to
I
pay
remember that one.
attention and folks really need to listen.
Yeah. The God, there's so much to talk about. So it doesn't even have to be a direct hit, though. I mean,
No, it
and
does not.
that's what I was referring to last fall when we had sort of close calls, high tides, full moons, and people ended up, at least those beach communities I'm familiar with, Reddington, Madeira, that sort of thing. People ended up with, not horrible flooding, but up to 6 to 12 inches in their homes. Without a direct hit.
Right.
So what's that about? That's sort of like the Miami condition too, isn't it? Sort of that wet condition,
Yeah.
Miami Beach.
Right. It's it's what we call compound flooding. So it's precipitation on top of storm surge, and then we're going to have on top of sea level rise as well. But I would encourage you to look at Elevate Treasure Island is a project that encourages all new development to be built on fill, and for the city to raise all their roads and public infrastructure. That project was featured at our summit. So effectively, they're looking to raise the island. So they're the first city that I've seen say, this is what we plan to do about sea level rise.
All new development to be raised and built on fill?
Yes, or substantially improved development. So if you're remodeling your home 50% of its value, you would also need to be thinking about bringing in fill.
Wow. Is fill a good thing? I thought the better solution is to have the water go flowing through. So they put those weep holes in the foundation. And
They'll have to do some additional engineering to figure out where the water goes, once the fill is there. And then as they'll have issues as well as one home raises and another home isn't raised. What happens there? So there's no, this is the exact right solution and it's going to work 100%, but they have started to move and take action. So.
Well, Skip, this always happens to me. After an hour, we realized we could talk about this for 2 or 3 hours. Ladies, I appreciate you coming in, Ren Kral and Kara Wood Sarah.
Yep.
You guys that sort of rhymes. But anyway, they've come in from the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council to talk about all the things that the council does since 1962. If you want more information on that, it's tbrpc.org. And what are your final words of wisdom? Ren, you're the executive director for less than a year. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You've worked your way up.
I have. I've worked my way up. So I would just encourage everybody, like I said, let's take hurricane season seriously. Protect yourselves. If you would like to see an interesting video, Project Phoenix 2.0, go to our website, and that will show you a visual simulation of what it would be like to have a hurricane, in the Tampa Bay region.
Yeah. And Kara, keep up the good work and resiliency. We need you and thousands more young people like you to help us get out of this mess. Our next show up on WMNF is Mitch and Ray and Ben on the skinny. I don't know what they're talking about today. Whatever it is, I know it's going to be brilliant, and we hope you have a wonderful day. Skip, how about you? How's life?
Life is great. Glad to be here.
All right, join us next week. I can't tell you exactly what the show is going to be, but I know it's going to be down and dirty on WMNF, and thanks for joining us.